Hello. Should I say something funny before we depress them?
Straight into depression.
I just do one. I have to say one thing. My favorite story of the week is that one of the people on the short list to be vice president, Donald Trump, is the governor of South Dakota. And you know that Donald Trump has said that he could walk down Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and get away with it. But she killed her dog Cricket. And you can't get away with killing a dog. You might be killing somebody on Fifth Avenue, not Cricket. Well, that wasn't funny, was it?
Barry need a chair.
So, do you understand?
Does he want the chair?
You can put half
I
behind
sit
you.
all day, I'm fine, trust me.
This came about, some people may have heard the recording of my interviewing Barry and Kaz stories on the subject of systems babies, and I'm just going to introduce how it came about. Barry and I must have been 15, 18 years ago. We're at the Castle, the Fortune Academy, talking to an 18-year-old kid resident. Should I give his name? No, we'll give his name. And he was a lost, beautiful soul. But a sweet, nice kid, but sadness. And Barry and I talked on that length, and afterwards Barry said to me, "Systems, baby." And I said, "What is that?" I'm going to tell you. And I said, "But how did you know?" And he said, "If you've been one, you can. All you have to do is look, and you can see it. You know." And I've always been interested that when Barry and Kaz get together, it's almost like Siamese twins. That you don't have to say it. You know about it. So, what I'm asking you is, what did you tell me when I asked you what is a systems baby, and what is your experience that makes you now an expert on it? I'll vanish.
Good evening, everyone.
Let me just slide this aside for a second.
As David said, my name is Barry Campbell, and I am a systems baby. And what that means is that I'm somebody who went from foster care, boys' home, to jail, and then on to prison. And just so people know, I always like to give them the context of it. And so I was born in England, in Edmonton. And at the time, my entire family is Jamaican. And so in order for us to gain access to America, we came through Great Britain, who has always been an ally. So that was the course to get into America. My sister and I were born during that trek from Jamaica to England. And my mother at the time left me with my maternal grandfather and his wife at the time. And she came on to England to establish herself, and we were to follow. At the time, I was about 7 or 8 years old, and my grandmother, who wasn't my maternal grandmother, but married to my maternal grandfather, had passed away. And so my mother had to bring us over early. And just so you understand, I came from living in England with my own bedroom, our own playroom, front yard, backyard, and I came to America to 8 people living in a 1-bedroom apartment on Sterling Place in Brooklyn, New York. At the time, as a child, I thought that if I was extremely bad, they would send me back to England. Not understanding at the time that my grandfather was too old to take care of 2 young children at the time, because it was me and my sister. My sister was 2 years older than me. I'm currently 58 years old. We came to this country in the 1970s, and my first experience with this country, getting picked up from the airport, we piled everything on the top of the car, the trunk of the car, the back of the car, and we all piled in and we all went home. Just so happens that my suitcase was the only one that flew off the car and disappeared. So when I got to Sterling Place and I realized where I was living, in my mind as a child, I thought if I was extremely bad, I'd get sent back home to England. So at the age of 7, 8 years old, I started running away from home at days at a time. I was sleeping under the stairs in apartment buildings. I was from Brooklyn. They were finding me up on 135th Street in Amsterdam at 7, 8 years old, wandering the streets at nighttime, sleeping on the trains. because I was so bad, and at the time when I came to this country, it was not popular to be Jamaican. And so here I was with an English accent, a Jamaican background, and I was getting teased every day at school, so I became a very violent individual. That coupled with the fact that when I got to this country, my uncle, who was around the same age as me, told me, don't you ever walk back in this house when you lost the fight. I don't care if you have to pick up a brick, a bottle, a chair, it doesn't matter, you can't lose. And so I took that philosophy to heart. To make a story short, I was in school fighting with another child at the time. Teacher came to break it up. I picked up a chair. When the teacher grabbed me, I spun around, hit her with the chair, and I was sitting in the precinct waiting for my mother to come and pick me up. The only problem is she never came and got me. When I went to family court the following day, my mother walked into the courtroom and said, take him, I can't do anything with him. Excuse me, because I get emotional when I think about this stuff. My grandmother was in the pew with the rest of the 8 people that we were living with in the apartment, and my grandmother stood up and said, no, I'll take him. And my mother turned around and looked at my grandmother and said, over my dead body. And she turned me over to the system. Once I went into the system at the time, I went into foster care, and because I kept running away from foster care, by the age of 9, I was sent to a boys' home at 66 Bourne Place, which was called St. Vincent's Home for Boys. At the time when I went there, I was the youngest child to ever go in there because they were only taking people that were 14, 15 years old at that time, and I was 9 years old. From the moment I got there, I was taken under the wing of the gentleman by the name of Father Harris, who was running the program at the time. I was made as a poster child, a fundraising child. I was a little black kid with chubby cheeks. I was going to do things that someone at my age, coming from my background, would never experience. At the age of 8 or 9 years old, I was eating at Benihana's, going to Lou Child's, going to fundraisers at the Hemsley Hotel. I was doing Broadway plays, The Wiz, and all that kind of stuff as a child. After a while, I got moved from the main house, which was on 66 Bourne Place, to a boys' home, which was right in back at Jamaica High School, 4-column house, beautiful house father, house mother, and I wanted to go back to the main house where the chaos was. It was where I learned how to do everything and anything associated with criminal activity, from drug dealing to car stealing to robbery to snatching chains, to even grabbing women's asses up and down Fulton Street in downtown Brooklyn. I was a terror. By the time I got to Rikers Island, it was home for me. As an adolescent, the chaos, the violence, the constant noise, the constant moving, the constant up and down, battling for power, positions, everything, I loved everything about it because it was just like the boys' home all over again for me. By the time I got to state prison, I was home. I was where I belonged. I believed all the stories that I was told growing up, that you ain't nothing, you will never be nothing, and you ain't gonna be anything in life, and I believed it, and so I bought into it. And I decided that if I was gonna be the devil, I was gonna be the best devil that ever walked the planet Earth. And so I began. I wound up addicted to drugs. Most people don't know this, but I was living literally 5 or 6 several levels under the Grand Central Station. And the way that we gained access to it was that on certain platforms there were certain grids that if you pulled them out, you could climb underneath Grand Central Station. And there were people under there that never come out. Coupled with the fact that I was molested as a child while going through the foster care system and the boys' home system, I was so messed up inside that you couldn't even talk to me about what a real life looked like. The only life that I knew was pain and misery. And so that's what I was going to give to the world in return, was pain and misery. My mother used to work on 3rd Avenue and 43rd Street. I started committing crimes right in front of her building because she abandoned me and turned me over to the system where I was abused and tortured as a child. And I thought that this was my way of paying her back. My way of paying her back was staying addicted to drugs and committing crimes in front of the building where she worked. Eventually, she wound up moving to Florida to get away from me and my nonsense. And I continued with my criminal activity until the age of 32. I've got 2 state bids under my belt. One is an adolescent, one is an adult. My rap sheet is 33 pages long, and I'm only 58 years old. Some of the things that I've done in life, I'm totally ashamed of, and some of the things that I've done in life, I will never be ashamed of, because they've made me who I am today, and I like who I am today. Today I work at Fortune Society. My entire life is built on the premises of helping somebody else get to the next level of where they want to be. I don't care what you did yesterday. I don't care what your crime or you were convicted of. I don't care what you were thinking yesterday. My only concern about you is, what do you want to do today, and where do you want to be tomorrow? And my job is to help you get there, no matter what any means necessary. And what I mean by that is that I learned a lot being in the system. The 1% learned how to bend the laws, and so I learned how to bend them also. I won't break them, but I will bend and twist the hell out of them to get what I need for my population, which is the formerly incarcerated individuals. The problem with us is that most of the time, the average Joe, when they get stressed in their life or when things aren't working out, they go see a therapist or they talk to their friends or their loved ones. People coming from my cultural background, when things don't go too well in your life, you run to the liquor store and the dope man. That's all you got. There's no in-between choices. So what I try to tell people today is that I've spent thousands and thousands on top of dollars for therapy. I pay for it because it works. I don't run to the drug man and I don't run to the liquor store anymore, because I understand that problems are something that you can work through if you look for the help that you need. The problem that I have with my life experiences is that there are a lot of people out there that came through the same system that I did and haven't found a way out yet. I spoke to a gentleman today who told me, nobody understands me and I just don't get it. How come when I talk to you, you understand? It takes somebody to go through what you've been through, and I'll give you an example. You can't understand what it feels like to win the lottery for $10 million because you've never won it. So for somebody who's won the lottery to come and try to explain to you the feeling that they got when they saw that they had the winning numbers, you could never understand, because you've never experienced it in that way or that manner. You may have won $2, $10, or even $100, but it's different when you win $10 million. It's the same thing for us. There were people that I grew up with that come through the system that, although we both made it through on the other side, I have my faculties and they don't. And the reason being is because I didn't keep all this stuff inside. People would come to me and say, Barry, how could you tell the world that you were molested as a child? I tell them, because I didn't walk into a room, take off my clothes and say, have sex with me. I was molested. It was something that happened to me. Right? People say, well, how can you tell people about your drug addiction when you don't look like you ever used drugs in your life? And I said, because it's part of who I am today. You can't tell half-truths and expect people to understand what you've been through. You have to give the whole picture. And the whole picture that I tell people about is that it's not all about the loving and glory stories about being a gangster and running the streets and being on top. It's about the low stuff that you experience while you're doing these things. And the problem with the children of today and the people of today that come up is that they only tend to remember the good stuff. Oh, when I stole $10,000. Oh, when we was up in the apartment and we had drugs all over the table. What about the time when you got arrested and the police told you to strip down, bend over, spread your ass cheeks and cough? What about the time when the police came running up in your house and they had everybody stripped up against the wall and all your stuff was thrown out on the floor? These are the things that people don't tend to forget when they come home and they're talking to the other little kids on about, oh, I had the phone and I had commissary, I had clothes and I was killing everybody, I was cutting everybody, and this is how I was living, I was a gangster on top. But you ain't said nothing when the police came in there and stripped you butt naked and made you bend over and cough like you was a little girl. Don't nobody tell you about those stories. So I'm here to tell you the truth, right? And the truth is that it's suffering. And if suffering is the only thing you know, then you're going to feel comfortable in that suffering, which was what I did until I went to Fortune Society. And I met people like David Rothenberg, Joanne Page, Stanley Richards, even Velma Donovan, who's sitting over there right now. And what they did for me was they found out that they saw potential in me before I saw it in myself. Do you know what it's like to see somebody every day and they come over to you and they hug you and they tell you, I love you today? And all you can do is tell them to get away from you because you don't understand that concept. I didn't understand why people wanted me to succeed expecting nothing in return. The world I come from, they give you something with one hand and the other hand is for the payment for it. When I got to Fortune, I met a group of people that only wanted me to succeed just for success. They wanted nothing in return. Joanne wanted nothing from me other than to see me succeed. David wanted nothing from me other than to see me succeed. And being around a group of people like that, and David can tell you, it took me years, possibly decades, for me to look at David Rothenberg and tell him that I love him. And I can look at him today and tell him that I love him. I can look at Velma today and tell her that I love her. I can look at all of you in the audience and say, I'm concerned for all of you. When you leave here, I want to make sure everybody gets home safely. I've learned how to care about something other than myself. And that's what Fortune Society has taught me, right? And I tell people all the time, 90% of the people that are in jail or prison are coming home. They are coming home. How do you want them to come home? Do you want them to come home with no support? Because they go right back to being who they were before they went to jail and prison. Or do you want them coming home with the kind of support that the Fortune Society provides for people? They can show you another way of life, another way of living, a way that doesn't involve criminal activity, and a way that can actually insert you back into society and let you feel like you're a human being and part of something other than destruction. Today I build things, I don't destroy them. Although my history dictates that I destroy, if you look at my rap sheet and you judge me based on that, I'd probably be still in prison. But if you judge me by the work that I've done in Fortune, you probably want me to be president. Thank you for your time.